This is probably the most aggressive young man Eve ever known. Just because the teacher preached too much morality, Bronson gave the teacher a good massage. It was like being punched by a bullied classmate. Bronson's violent actions made the principal angry and forced him to take him home to confide in the parent. But unexpectedly the mother would spoil her child and close the door and chase the principal home. The family is really a spoiled child because the mother is not wrong. When Bronson grew up, he also worked part-time at a fast food restaurant here. He and the employee had a secret crush on each other, but the family, so the girl would leave anyway. According to another guy, he was a big player and stole money from his boss to let her buy an iPhone 15 Pro Max, and of course, sooner or later, this would be discovered, and the next day the police came to his house looking for him without saying a word. But just like that, he rushed and punched the profile picture of the two policemen. Finally, he had to say "Dear Jury" in front of the dock and was given 2 calendars to sit and play with. After being released, he kissed his colleague Anna, whom he liked, and together they had a very adorable son. He hoped he would look like his father, but because he didn't have money to buy diapers for the child, he decided to play for the lottery. Bronson went to rob a bank this time, Dear Jury episode 2, and was given 7 calendars, but his nature was not afraid of heaven and earth, so he was stubborn wherever he was. Even though he was locked up, although he went to prison, he still refused to change himself, even more stubborn than when at home. For Bronson, this room was not a place of imprisonment, but he saw it was a 5-star hotel with a 24-hour guard. 7 means eating 3 meals a day and not having to do any labor. Bronson also sees this as a place for him to practice martial arts. He is determined to let this entire prison know the name Bronson. While the other prisoners obediently do their jobs, the job was assigned to him in hopes of being released soon, but he had a lot of hair on his head and just sat there playing around. The prison office told him frankly that it was none of your business, go away and let the water clear, and he got angry and called for more. A few big, dark, and smelly prison guards came to ask about his health, but no one dared to admit it. First, he immediately rushed to play with the prison guards, but they were outnumbered, so he quickly. However, Bronson's wild actions made his fellow prisoners see him as a hero. Everywhere he went, he was applauded and his nostrils flared. Bronson was also very proud of himself, so he was locked up, entered the solitary confinement room to sit and play with 2 Kwong children. But no matter how he was locked up, the male lead still refused to stop, because in order to become more famous, after being released, Bronson continuously showed martial arts to his fellow prisoners. He was even featured in the newspaper, causing the whole country to know about him. His famous name meant that Bronson had to change cells constantly because he was too stubborn. The prison guards didn't have any sympathy for him. They really wanted to send Bronson home, the final resting place, but it was impossible to beat him to death, so he could only use loving fists to teach this young man, Brut Suc. But no matter what he did, he could not stop him from trying to start a fight with him. Others keep having to change prison, but no matter where they go, they can't stand it. He's so frustrated that the police have to transfer him to the mental hospital, and of course, here, the male lead still keeps punching people with them. Things here are not like prison because every time you mess up, the doctors will work together to control you and give you a special injection right away. Your ass will make your body erect and numb, unable to move. Only then did Bronson stay still in one place. Now, even if he wanted to fight, he couldn't move his arms or legs, he couldn't even curse at others, he couldn't open his mouth. The mental patients teased him. He could only lie still helplessly, listened, but after a few hours the anesthetic gradually wore off. He was able to stand up and walk while other patients danced carefree, but Gron did not want such a life. He only had one heart. He wanted to escape this mental hospital, but before he could leave the door, the doctor stopped him. He thought Bronson would now have to give up and accept to stay here for the rest of his life, but in fact, he was still constantly looking for ways to escape this place. Just as his hands and feet were itching, there was a patient who dared to provoke him, so the male lead immediately prepared a rope and silently approached his neck from behind, making it impossible for him to scream for help. When the doctor discovered it, the mental patient was reunited with his deceased ancestors. Bronson thought he would be able to return to the prison where he considered his home, but life was not as he dreamed, and his hair was never straight. He was once again locked in the hospital's solitary confinement room. However, every time he went out to eat, he repeatedly beat people with the intention of killing other patients. Even if the doctor tried everything, he couldn't cure him. He became more and more crazy. He alone confronted the entire hospital. The police were sent to suppress him, but they still couldn't stop Ben's rampage. They even led him, leading other patients to destroy the hospital, smashing and setting fire to houses, etc. The total value of the damage caused by England reached $10 million. Finally, the hospital was afraid of Bronson because he did not want to keep it. To avoid causing trouble, the hospital gave him his freedom back so he could leave this place forever and never come back. His parents also personally came here to pick up their beloved son, who was free to come. At present, he has been in prison for 20 years, during which time everything has changed and become strange to Bronson. The house is no longer as familiar as it was when he was a child. He thought that after 20 years in prison, he had died. I knew I was scared, but who would have thought that when he was released, he still had the same disability of not being able to fight for a day, and he felt unbearably itchy. So the male lead went to find his friend named Tom to ask him to find him a friend, a place to relieve stress, if he knew how to do business. Bronson first could make him a lot of money, so Tom immediately seized this opportunity. He arranged for Bronson to become a boxer in the underworld from then on. He can both fight and earn a lot of money, literally. Toon let him compete with an old man with fighting experience. However, he was too fake and weak, even though he tried to counterattack. He faced for a villain like Bronson. It was unbelievable. After a few shots, Bronson punched him down, but the reward was only $20. The male protagonist wanted more than that, so he participated in the next match. This time the prize money will be higher, and that means the opponent will also be heavier. But Bronson has never been bored with anyone. He even fought two people at the same time. Although the army was larger, they weren't Brent's opponent. He filled their mouths with onions and won an absolute victory, but the male lead was so crazy that no opponent dared to compete with him, so Bronson played big and switched to competing with him. The ferocious hunting dogs thought they were hunting dogs, but to him, they were just newly born kikis. Since then, Bronson has earned a lot of money, and now the money is there, so the next thing he does is to find someone for him. He had a new girlfriend, and this time he noticed Juliet. He didn't hesitate and immediately confessed his love to her, but the male lead was a step late. She already had a boyfriend and was busy preparing for the wedding. With Bronson, giving up was not on his mind. He immediately went straight to the diamond store. He didn't understand why he had money but didn't buy it. Instead, he used force to threaten the store owner, forcing him to give it away for free, gave himself the biggest diamond ring, and then happily brought it home to give to Juliet. He didn't hesitate and immediately confessed his love to her, but the male lead was a step late. She already had a boyfriend and was busy preparing for the wedding. With Bronson, giving up was not on his mind. He immediately went straight to the diamond store. He didn't understand why he had money but didn't buy it. Instead, he used force to threaten the store owner, forcing him to give it away for free, gave himself the biggest diamond ring, and then happily brought it home to give to Juliet. Ways to punch each other. Today, a prison guard went to the inspection room as soon as the other person went inside. The male lead immediately closed the door to take him hostage. After just a few threats, the prison warden cried out and was afraid he would pee in his pants, but after waiting for a long time, no one came to let Anova come with him. It wasn't until the afternoon that the prison warden, the new chief, called to ask what Bronson wanted, and of course he wanted someone to exchange martial arts with. But his wish was not agreed by the chief warden. He thought that this time Bronson would be angry and beat the hostages, but who would have thought? He just would have thought. He just took off his clothes and forced the weak young man to bathe him. But right after that, dozens of other prison guards broke down the door and rushed in. Together, they worked together to beat Bronson to the shore and into the field, then burned his limbs. Then he locked him in a secret room. And the prison warden said that if he remained like that, he would lock him in this room until he died. Thanks to these threats, Bronson was able to save him a little. He also caused less trouble and often drew pictures to relieve itchy limbs. Unexpectedly, although Bronson, the pictures he drew were extremely vivid and his drawing talent was discovered by his teacher. He wants to train the male protagonist to become an artist to transform him from a violent person into a gentle person. And the prison warden said that if he remained like that, he would lock him in this room until he died. Thanks to these threats, Bronson was able to save him a little. He also caused less trouble and often drew pictures to relieve itchy limbs. Unexpectedly, although Bronson, the pictures he drew were extremely vivid and his drawing talent was discovered by his teacher. He wants to train the male protagonist to become an artist to transform him from a violent person into a gentle person. Patiently, he would definitely have a chance to show off his talent. But Bronson, he couldn't wait any longer, so he immediately showed off his brute talent right in this prison. He beat the teacher to the point of fainting on the whip and then asked the chief warden to play him a song because he was busy. Bronson held his heart, so he had to listen as soon as the music played. Bronson immediately started showing off his talent on the teacher until he got bored and called the prison warden in to satisfy his passion for fighting. With his strength, he easily defeated each of them. New York won, but there were too many prison guards, so he was soon controlled by them and punched him until he sprayed syrup. This was also an opportunity for the prison guards to take revenge, so they beat him, without fail. He was then locked in a solitary confinement room with his body covered in wounds. The consequence of causing a riot is that he will have to spend time in this solitary confinement cell for the rest of his life. This is a movie taken from a true story. Currently the prisoner RB is still being held in a British prison. This the end of the movie. Hello and see you all again.